blonde. She's got big boobs. She's got those big titties. And I love them big titties. I want to see girls with big boobs. And she is hot.
It's episode 163 of Radio Free Innsmouth, and it has come to my attention. I have been informed that I have been teasing you all lately, so sorry about that. But last week I may have teased something that would be interesting to cover that isn't really a metal thing in actuality, but is in fact metal adjacent. Might have some very heavy synth presence. If you can guess what it is, you win.
근데 솔직히 어느 정도 맞는 것 같긴 해요.
Absolutely nothing.
Co-host has informed me that we have no budget, but you might get bragging rights, be like, hey, I figured out what the thing was right before we posted it, blah. But the week before last week, I also teased an Absu episode. Actually, it wasn't even really on purpose. I mentioned that Proscriptor, the main guy in Absu, was doing stuff with Zemiel, which was a sort of the brother band of Agatus, and then I played some Absu, and I looked through, and I was like, holy shit, I literally haven't done an Absu episode. I'm actually very surprised by that. I could have sworn I did one at some point because Absu is one of my favorite bands. So fuck it, here's an Absu episode. If you don't know Absu, they are one of the original black metal bands from the United States. Specifically, they are from Texas, and the whole thing has consistently been helmed by drummer/vocalist Proscriptor McGovern, which is an awesome, weird black metal pseudonym, combining some Celtic stuff with some wacky Sumerian occult shit. But before Absu existed, he had a band called Magus. And it is in Magus that you can hear embryonic conceptions of what would later become Absu. This album gets pretty doomy at points. It was actually sort of like a demo re-released by Elegy Records. Everybody loves those guys. Except for, the libtards. But it has like the same sort of pretensions with all the violins. And then also some really intense drumming from Proscriptor McGovern, who is like famous for being a world-class drummer, and he was even at this point. Like, this was supposed to be like a Death Doom thing, and he's doing shit like this on it. Just weird stop-start janky stuff. Unfortunately, Magus didn't go anywhere. I would have liked to see what like a full-length album from them would have sounded like, but he hooked up with his two major comrades, Cythraul and Equitant Ephernane, on guitars and main songwriting, and then bass and backup vocals respectively, and started up a band called Absu. And the first Absu album, Barathrum V.I.T.R.I.O.L, if I was to compare it to anything, it would actually be the first Dark Throne album.
Black metal.
Not so much in terms of how it sounds, but because it is mostly a death metal album with a whole lot of black metal kind of atmospheric touches, and then Proscriptor doing way more complex stuff on drums than would be necessary for the material.
Boom! Haunted house!
So here we have a creeping tremolo death metal / black metal riff, and this kind of slow introduction musical phrases by highlighted drum hits. That's a big thing with every era of Absu. Here we go. So he's doing all these like weird tricky fills over what is a simple, pretty bog standard kind of death metal riff. But, I mean, that makes it interesting. I do enjoy this album. Not as much as later Absu, but it's cool for what it is. I like the cover a lot. Also, the female vocals are on this album. That's more of the atmospheric stuff you heard him experimenting with back in Magus, and that'll become a major part of Absu going forward. Lots of atmospheric and odd components. But, yeah, they marketed it as a black metal album. It came out like 93 or something. This is early-ass shit. Nowadays, it'd probably be considered old school death metal, or like whatever the nerds say it. But back then, Proscriptor McGovern and a lot of the Scandinavian black metal guys did not get along. Particularly, well, Black Moon, Dave Parland from Necrophobic and Dark Funeral were having it out in a rather dramatic fashion, calling each other out in interviews with the metal fanzines at the time, cutting some promos on each other.
You're lucky I'm not there, otherwise they'll punch me in your goddamn grave. I'm not playing, Marty. I'm done with the embarrassment. You're not even the real Ozzy Osbourne. Are you fucking pathetic? You fucking loser, dude.
Obviously a little bit less embarrassing than that. But yeah, the crux of the argument was that a lot of people didn't think Absu was real black metal. And they were sort of right depending on your definition of black metal. Although to be fair, after this little dispute, Dave Parlin ended up leaving every major band that he was in, putting out some EPs that not too many people have heard, and then committing chop suey.
Uh-oh.
Whereas Absu decided to take those words to heart and make a real fucking black metal album, and a real nasty one too. This is the second Absu album. It is entitled The Sun of Tiphareth, and you might be able to accuse early Absu of just being death metal with occasional atmospheric touches. This one is the start of an utterly unique sound for Absu. The songs are very long, they are very complex, they have lots of movements and tempo changes and shit. And there's also a lot more 80s influence going on, quite a bit of Slayer and then local Texans like Morbid Scream. In fact, they covered Morbid Scream on this album. But yeah, we got the spooky narrations, the higher pitched guitars, the drums of course are very majestic, lots of fills. Well, here we go, thrash breaks. This is when Absu pretty much becomes a black thrash band, or at least what would nowadays be considered black thrash. You know, back then people just called this fucking black metal. This is what Absu sounded like. They were the black metal band with all the thrash influence. And it was great. Very catchy riffs, and they all flow together very nicely. That weird atmospheric shit's coming back, guys. Watch the layering right here. We have this spooky melody from the female vocals. Later on doubled up by sort of like singing and screaming at the same time from Proscript. They're really cool vocals there. And then we start adding in more kind of acoustic guitars. Here's like the bass line melody of the acoustic guitar, and then they're going to put another acoustic guitar melody in the mix right there. How cool is that? Very cool. Like it quite a bit. But don't you worry, there's plenty of thrash yet to come. Also some nice atmospheric keyboard work. Gotta enjoy that. But this whole thing's like a blend of sort of like multiple generations of metal. Kind of like an epic, almost sort of Black Sabbath sense of songwriting with the multiple parts. Then you got lots of the thrashy shit from the 80s, lots of black metal from the 90s, and even a little bit of ye old King Diamond right there. That's pretty cool. That's also going to become important later on for Absu, another trademark element of their very idiosyncratic sound. And as we get to the end of this song, I want to show you how it bleeds into the second one. So that was called just Absu. That's the name of the first song. How do you like that? Oh, and then we got here this fucking like 8-minute long Judas Priest ending with like all the fucking fills and the guitar. Speed this shit up, would you?
아, 이거는 못 고르지.
Look, it actually was a cool ending. It's just that, you know, we're already in like a 3-minute long sample of these songs just for one album. But here we go. The water here is pretty cool, fading out, and then you get these like light cymbal hits coming in, and then a bit of guitar fading in there into the second song on this album, Face More Tirnanog, Across the Northern Sea to Visnek. Those atmospheric kind of drum hits he's doing, big part of why Absu is so cool. I love him. Into a powerfully grooving kind of black metal / thrash metal / death metal kind of riff that only Absu could pull off. But yeah, that was really cool because the first song is called Absu, and that of course is the name of like the Sumerian deity that was also sort of like the source of all the fresh water in the world according to their cosmology. And then the second song, Face More Tirnanog, Across the Northern Sea to Visnek, we have moved up to a different ocean. And those are kind of like these two oceans, you know? They represent the two facets of Absu's sound at this point, which is wacky Sumerian occult stuff and then Celtic paganism. Also, I only know how to say that song title because they yell it in the middle of the song.
No offense, but it sounds like some fucking gobbledygook.
But that gobbledygook is all part of Absu, man. They call their style mythological occult metal, and I'd say it fits. The third album, The Third Storm of Cythraul, ventures further down the Celtic pagan section of the Absu axis. King Diamond vocals are back. Hell yeah. But yeah, this one's even faster for the most part. The production is a little weird. It kind of has this very distant guitar sound, but it's actually pretty well balanced. You just have to turn it up pretty loud to hear everything. But you can hear the bass, the drums, the guitars, the vocals, all the wacky little atmospheric touches. Pretty perfect. And here's a thrash break. These guys are huge on those very nasty thrash breaks, and everybody knows I love that shit. Or at least, I mean, you probably do if you listen to more than like 2 or 3 episodes of this. I'm always pointing them out. Also on this album, they may have gone mostly like shorter thrashy for the most part, shorter thrashier songs. But then at the end, there's this like massive epic behemoth entitled Of Celtic Fire We Are Born. This one's cool because like the bass sort of takes over as a lead melodic instrument, more due to the production than anything, since that guitar in the background is so fuzzy. But I like it, mixed up there with the acoustic guitars. Very cool stuff. And it actually does kind of have like a very Celtic kind of feel to it. It's still very dark and warlike, but it's, you know, it's folky. I like it. Also the drumming, even though it's like a slower song, it's still like very adroit, adept. Lots of words that start with A that describe how nuts Proscriptor's drumming is. Clean vocals, always appreciated. This is actually like a standout track for me, like the big epic here. This would be the case with the album after this one too. They put like a big epic at the end, and it's like the big standout, but it's all pretty good stuff on this album. I dig it. The lead guitars on this are spectacular. Shaftiel kind of doing trade-off solos with himself. They are very melodic and catchy, and they like weave their way through like the sea of black metal chords and melodic bass lines very effectively. This part coming up here is really cool because we got these like lower on the neck kind of melodic solos, and then we got this really dank, high-pitched, kind of like almost bagpipe-ish tin whistle maybe? I don't know. I bet you they were going for that. And that's really cool. And then watch how this all collapses into some atmospheric acoustic stuff. Proscriptor could probably be in a prog rock band if he wanted, with like his very atmospheric way of drumming and knowing when to step out and when to jump back in. So Third Storm of Cythraul. A lot of people don't like it because the production is kind of weird. I actually think it adds to the overall sort of like decrepit, desiccated, archaeological kind of feel to this album. But any production problems would be corrected with the next album, which is my personal favorite Absu album. I think it's called Terra. It might be Tara. They say Terra on the album a couple times. That's because Absu's Proscriptor over there is doing some kind of wordplay with Terra and then like the word terror. So I don't know how to actually pronounce it, but fucking whatever. This album is really cool. If you've seen like those old Nile booklets that Carl Sanders used to make where he would explain each song, Absu friggin' one up to them, alright? They're beating Nile at their own game. This booklet is so detailed, it has a goddamn glossary at the end.
Get those nerds!
Where it explains like what the word gulch means, in case you didn't know. Nerds! The music itself, however, is not the kind of thing you would expect to have a glossary appended to it, because it's really fast and heavy, as you can hear. Production on this is also perfect, and we finally get a nice accentuation of the insane stuff Proscriptor's doing on drums, combined with a really nasty, sharp guitar tone. Check out the lyrics right here, how fast he spits them out. Very Slayer. Like, very hard to follow along within the booklet. But, you know, all the lyrics are in there, so you can give it a shot if you'd like. Watch this. This is fucking fast and nasty. That's good shit. Okay, so, the funny thing about this one, right around this time, Slayer was getting back together. Well, I mean, a little little bit after this, but fucking whatever. Slayer was getting back together, and they were looking for a new drummer because Paul Bostaff was leaving. Proscriptor was one of the people that applied, and he didn't get the job. The actual reason is probably this was all just a giant ruse so they could rehire Dave Lombardo with a lot of publicity, but I think it's because friggin' Kerry King couldn't write riffs to fit around that wacky drumming, because all his shit nowadays is... So after Terra, or Tara, whatever it's called, that's the best Absu album. Anybody tells you anything else, they're either lying or else they're like a really cool dude that says like Third Storm of Cythraul is their best album. I mean, you gotta be a real maniac to back that up, but it is a defensible position. But yeah, then Absu kind of dissolves, everybody goes their separate ways, but in kind of like the mid to late 2000s, they come back, but it's Proscriptor with an entirely new lineup, and this stuff, it's not bad. You know, it works pretty well live mixing with their old material, but to me it just doesn't feel like old Absu. I don't know if it's because Shaftdale and Equiton Ifrenane are no longer doing guitar and bass, but the riffs just seem like way different. Way more kind of like modern sort of death metal mixed with like retro thrash as opposed to actual thrash from the 80s. So yeah, I'm not huge on later Absu. Sorry guys. But it meant I got to see Absu live finally. That was pretty cool.
How neat is that? That's pretty neat.
But then Absu broke up again, and it was very dramatic because, okay, look, let's say you get a guitarist that was in like the first retro thrash band from the early 2000s, but that band was actually terrible. Rumpelstiltskin But then like before that, this dude was in one of the most obnoxious and disgusting porno grinds bands of all time, and that's saying something coming from me because I listen to like Torso Fuck like it's no big deal. But yeah, he was in XXX Maniac, classic album Harvesting the Cunt Nectar. Yikes, look at that fucking cover. But yeah, that dude, he's in Absu, and then he gets a sex change. Cuts his wang off, my man, and old Proscriptor wasn't having none of that, and he told the guy so, and homeboy that had the sex change leaked their DMs back and forth, which was not very kind of him, very internet drama.
Hey, Mark, why don't you quit loud before I smack that goddamn smile on your face, you fucking faggot ass bitch? You have no right doing what you did. None! I would never do that to you! So what makes you think you have the right to do what you did to me, you fucking bitch?
So it's kind of unfortunate that like one of the original US black metal bands had to go out on the
Ethan Ralph, it's me, Gator.
internet drama train, but whether Metal Sucks likes it or not, Proscriptor's still around. I actually think his work with Melekesh was a more Absu-like follow-up to old school Absu than the post-reunion Absu shit was. So go and check that out. He's working with Zemiel now apparently, so that should bring out some cool stuff. I fucking love Zemiel, and I'll see you next week with something weird.
Bang, bang, boom, pow, bang! Yeah! Well, guess what? Senna is my waifu. So stay the fuck away from her. Be nice to her. Don't treat her like trash. She's the best anime girl. I don't know why all the other girls always pick on her. They fucking are not nice to her at all. I don't know why. What the fuck, man?